People are always saying to me, "Hi, Mungo, what is it about your own special brand of cooking that makes it so memorable?" And I always have to say, it's not the size of your hob, the meat in your carb, the dumplings in your stew. For if your life's in tatters, the only thing that matters is the food that says I love you. Now unfortunately, we can't all be like me. But you can do the very next best thing and put a little bit of Mungo between your lips. Now you may remember that on our last programme I cooked for you Mungo's Jungle Pizza, my own particular twist on the traditional pizza, but with a topping comprised of things that I'd foraged on the floor of my garden shed. Well, this week I'd like to follow that up with a favourite staple of English cuisine, a lovely sweet dessert. That's a dessert with a Mungo twist. As a country, we've grown to love our desserts, which is why we have one of the sharpest rises in type 2 diabetes in the developed world. For who doesn't like such sweet treats like the humble vanilla, a succulent eaten mess, and one of my own personal favourites, a lovely juicy Manchester tart. But back in the old country, there were no such fancies. The land of my grandparents had nothing to offer but toil, sweat and pogroms. But these simpler times meant that these simpler people had to adapt their eating habits too. Indeed, I remember visiting my great-uncle Blinker shortly after he was sectioned for inappropriate behaviour in children's playgrounds. In between bouts of shouting anti-Semitic abuse at the nurses, he used to regale me with tales of those special Christmases of his childhood, when the family would come together and celebrate their racial superiority with some wonderful dishes. Now, sadly, most of these dishes have been lost to the ravages of time, like so many tears on a sad clown's face. But there was one dish that was passed on through the generations of my family, and it's this dish that I want to cook for you today. It's my Uncle Glinker's sweet meat sponge fancy. Think Victoria sponge, but with an old country twist. In fact, this recipe is a classic Mungo fusion of Eastern European cuisine and Greg's the Bakery. And after swallowing my tasty treat, you'll never look at desserts in the same way again. And so, for this recipe, you will need an egg, some plain flour, the choicest of butter, and some firm and fruity English raspberry jam. So first, we delicately dust our bowl with flour. Then we add our egg and work in some butter. Then we work these together into a mix. You might like to use a spatula, but I always prefer to use my fingers when working up a frothy batter. Now I've heated up the oven to over 180 degrees. I pop my mixture onto the top shelf. And voila! Here we have a traditional sponge cake. But hi, Mungo, I hear you shout. Where's that Mungo twist that you promised us? Well, fear not, for this is where my incarcerated uncle's influence comes in. For this portion of the recipe, we will need the reddest of borscht, or beetroot as we call it here. And to top it all off, some succulent, raw, fermented ox livers. They were less commonly used in confectionery here. Back in the old country, raw liver is still served on the feast of St. Nicholas to mark the fact that sugar was an unknown concept to long after the fall of the all-pervasive Bolshevik dictatorship. Here is what the finished dish should look like. It's my Uncle Glinka's borscht and sweetmeat fancy. I'm sure it smells as good as it tastes. Let's try a bit, shall we?